Earth X. It is one of those stories that feels massive in scope, but also really unsettling the more you think about it. It's set in an alternate future where the entire world has changed in a way no one expected. Thanks to the Terrigen Mist being released by Black Bolt, pretty much everyone on Earth has developed some kind of power. Sounds cool at first, until you realize when everyone is super, things don't magically get better. They get way more chaotic. The world itself feels broken. Captain America is no longer the symbol he once was, after crossing a line he can't come back from. Meanwhile, Norman Osborn is running the United States, which already tells you how messed up things have become. On top of that, there's this creepy kid called Skull, controlling people and building an army, adding even more tension to a world that's already falling apart. What really pushes the story into something special is the cosmic side. Loki discovers that Earth itself isn't just a planet, it's basically an egg meant to birth a celestial, and that idea alone changes everything. Suddenly the stakes aren't just about saving society or fixing politics, it's about the survival of the entire planet. And the wild part is that Loki, of all characters, ends up playing a key role in trying to stop what's coming. This is way darker than your usual Marvel story. It's not just about action, but about consequences, legacy, and what happens when decades of superhero history lead to a future that doesn't feel heroic anymore. You see how things evolved over time, and not always in a good way. There's this constant feeling that the world has moved past its peak and is now dealing with the fallout. Earth X could be something huge and completely different in the MCU. It had that mix of grounded political tension and big cosmic ideas, which is a rare combo. You could go the route of making it a standalone dark future story, or connect it to the multiverse and have a modern hero experience this world. Either way, it's the kind of story that shows what Marvel looks like when everything goes just a little too far. Punisher Max. When Punisher Max kicks off, you're immediately thrown into a version of the Marvel world that feels way more grounded. Written by Garth Ennis, this run strips away the superhero fluff and focuses entirely on Frank Castle as a war veteran who never really left the battlefield. He's older here, more tired, but also way more dangerous. The story treats crime seriously. There's no costumes, no over-the-top gimmicks, just real-world brutality and consequences that hit hard. The tone is what really makes the series stand out. It's very raw and violent and doesn't hold back at all. You're dealing with organized crime, human trafficking, corrupt systems, and some genuinely disturbing villains. Every fight feels messy and painful, not like a cool action scene, but more like something you almost don't want to watch. And that's exactly why it works so well. It makes you feel the weight of everything Frank does, instead of just cheering him on mindlessly. The story also spends much time exploring Frank's mindset. You get flashbacks to his time in Vietnam, showing how war shaped him into the person he is. It's about a man who only knows one way to exist. There's a constant feeling that even if crime disappeared overnight, Frank wouldn't know how to stop. That psychological angle adds a lot more depth than people usually expect from Punisher stories. And the villains in Max are also on another level. Characters like Bracuda, they aren't just obstacles, they are terrifying in their own right. They match Frank's brutality and sometimes even push beyond it, which creates this intense back and forth where you're not even sure who's worse. It keeps the tension high because every encounter feels unpredictable and personal, not just another mission. If you are thinking about an R-rated Marvel movie, this is basically the blueprint. Punisher Max already feels like something made for that kind of adaptation. It's grounded, it's mature, and unapologetically harsh. But it's not just violence for the sake of it. There's a real story here about trauma, morality, and what happens when someone dedicates their entire life to war. Done right, it could easily be one of the most intense and memorable Marvel adaptations out there. Supreme Power. Supreme Power is Marvel taking a very familiar superhero concept and pushing it into a much darker direction. Written by G. Michael Straczynski, the story starts with a spaceship crash landing on Earth, carrying an alien baby who would later become Hyperion. But instead of being raised by a normal family, the US government takes him in and turns him into something else entirely, a controlled asset, trained and shaped to serve their interests. As Hyperion grows up, he's basically molded into the perfect hero, but everything about him feels off. His life is monitored, his actions are calculated, and his identity is built around being a weapon first and a person second. When the government finally reveals him to the world, it creates this ripple effect where other superhumans start emerging too. That's how the Squadron Supreme forms, not as a natural team, but as a result of manipulation, fear, and power structures. The story really shines in how it explores control and corruption. These aren't clean-cut heroes doing the right thing. They are people shaped by experiments, politics, and pressure. Some of them struggle with their roles, others lean into it, and that tension keeps everything grounded. You're constantly questioning whether they are actually protecting the world or just enforcing the will of those in charge. Yeah, it is much more serious and mature than typical team-up stories. There's violence, but also a lot of focus on psychology and consequences. It feels closer to something like The Boys than a traditional Marvel team-up story. Powers exist, but they come with heavy baggage, and the world reacts to them in a way that feels more realistic and uneasy. As an R-rated adaptation, Supreme Power could be a really interesting move for Marvel. It offers a chance to tell a superhero story that questions the system behind the heroes instead of just celebrating them. And even if they don't go fully dark, introducing the Squadron Supreme in any form could open the door to bigger, more complex stories down the line. Fury Max, My War Gone By. As the name suggests, the story is about Nick Fury, and it's written by Garth Ennis, and it throws away the cool spy image and shows you a version of Fury that feels way more human, and way more messed up. This isn't the polished leader of S.H.I.E.L.D., this is a soldier shaped by decades of war, addiction, and choices that don't sit right even with him. The story places Fury in real-world conflicts after World War II, so you're not dealing with aliens or supervillains here. This is about actual wars, political agendas, and operations that live in moral gray areas. Fury works alongside intelligence agencies, gets involved in things he probably shouldn't, and keeps chasing that feeling of being in a justified war, even when deep down he knows that kind of war might not exist anymore. What really stands out here is Fury himself. He drinks too much, he talks rough, he makes reckless decisions, and he leans into his worst instincts more often than he should. But at the same time, you can tell there's something underneath all that. He's not just doing this for fun, he's stuck. War is the only thing that ever made sense to him, and now he's constantly searching for that same clarity in a world that doesn't offer it anymore. The tone is heavy and grounded, similar to a war drama more than a superhero story. There's violence, but it's not flashy, it's a bit more realistic. There's also a lot of focus on consequences, both physically and mentally. You start to see how years of conflict slowly wear Fury down, shaping him into someone who doesn't really know how to exist outside of it. As an R-rated movie, this could be something completely different for Marvel. Think less superhero blockbuster and more intense character study. And yeah, putting Samuel L. Jackson in a version of this story would go crazy, but it would need to fully commit to that darker, grounded tone. No holding back, no softening edges, just a deep dive into a man who spent his entire life at war and doesn't know how to stop. 1 Month to Live. The story follows a guy named Dennis Sykes. He's no legendary hero or iconic name. He's just a normal person who randomly gets powers after being exposed to toxic materials while trying to stop a crime. But instead of it being a typical origin story, there's a twist. He's diagnosed with aggressive cancer and only has 1 month left to live. What Dennis chooses to do with that time is what carries the entire story. Instead of giving up or trying to save himself, he decides to use his powers to help as many people as possible before he's gone. The catch is that every time he uses those powers, it shortens his already limited time even more. So every heroic act comes with a real cost, and you constantly feel that ticking clock in the background. The story brings in major Marvel heroes, but they are not the focus. They are there to react to Dennis, to witness what he's doing, and honestly, to be inspired by him. Seeing characters who are used to saving the world being affected by a regular guy, making the most out of his final days, adds a lot of emotional weight. It flips the usual dynamic in a really powerful way. Yeah, it's not violent or edgy like some other R-rated ideas, but it's definitely mature. It deals with death, purpose, and what it really means to be a hero. There are moments that feel hopeful, but also moments that hit hard because you know exactly where the story is going. It's one of those stories that stays with you after you're done reading it. As a movie, it's not the easiest sell because the main character isn't sticking around for sequels, but that's also what makes it special. It would be a self-contained story with a clear beginning and end, focused entirely on one person trying to leave something good behind. And if done right, it could easily be one of the most emotional Marvel adaptations ever. I mean, it doesn't need to be a movie, maybe a Disney Plus special. Marvel 1602. The comics drop you into a version of the Marvel Universe that feels completely different right from the start. Written by Neil Gaiman, the story takes all the heroes you know and places them in the year 1602, during the Elizabethan era. So instead of modern-day Avengers and X-Men, you've got characters like Stephen Strange as a royal physician, and Nick Fury as a spy master working for the crown. It's instantly interesting, because everything is familiar, but also completely reimagined in a grounded historical setting. The plot slowly builds into something much bigger than it first seems. It starts with political tension, with Queen Elizabeth I's court, rising threats, secret alliances, but then things get weird in the best way. There's this looming sense that the world itself is breaking, like reality isn't supposed to look like this. You've got strange storms, unnatural events, and a mystery tied to a character named Rohaz, who might be the key to why everything feels off. So it's less about big action and more about unraveling what's really going on. One of the strongest parts of the story is how it handles the witch breed, which are basically this world's version of mutants. Instead of being feared in a modern society, they are hunted during a time that already feared anything different. It adds a layer of realism because this isn't just superhero conflict, it's tied to real historical paranoia. Visually and tonally, this would be such a unique R-rated project. Think less colorful superhero movie and more dark fantasy drama. You could lean into the political intrigue, the religious tension, and the slow mystery of a collapse in reality. It's honestly closer to something like Game of Thrones than a typical Marvel story, and that mix of grounded history with hidden powers and secrets could make it stand out a lot. If Marvel ever wanted to explore the multiverse in a deeper way, Marvel 1602 is perfect for that. It's not just a what-if scenario, it feels like a fully realized world with its own rules, culture, and stakes. And instead of rushing through it in a movie, this is something that would work way better as a full series, given time to explore all the characters and the mystery behind why this universe even exists in the first place. Marvels. It flips the usual superhero story on its head by making the main character just a regular guy. Phil Sheldon is a photographer and reporter, not a hero, not a genius, not anything special in a world full of gods and monsters. And that's exactly why the story works so well. Instead of following the people with powers, you experience everything through someone trying to understand what's happening around him. Through Sheldon's career, you basically walk through the entire history of Marvel. He's there when the original Human Torch appears, when Captain America becomes a symbol during World War II, when the Avengers form, and when mutants start being feared and hated. But instead of these moments feeling like epic highlights, they feel personal, confusing, and sometimes even scary. You're not watching legends, you're watching events unfold like a normal person would. And what really makes this story stand out is how it handles perspective. Heroes aren't always seen as heroes from the outside. Sometimes they are inspiring, sometimes they are terrifying, and sometimes people just don't know what to think. The X-Men stuff especially hits hard because you see how fear and prejudice built from the ground level. It's not just a big message, it feels real because you're seeing it through someone living in that world. There's also a strong emotional core with Sheldon himself. As he grows older, you see how these events shape his life, his beliefs, and even his relationships. He's constantly trying to make sense of a world that keeps getting bigger and stranger. And over time, there's this mix of awe, fear, and even doubt about whether all of this is actually a good thing for humanity. As a movie or series, this would be such a different kind of Marvel project. It wouldn't rely on non-stop action, it would focus more on reactions and storytelling from the ground level. Think of it like experiencing the Marvel Universe the way we would if it were real. And that perspective alone could make it one of the most unique and meaningful adaptations Marvel could ever do. Destroyer Max. The comic takes a pretty obscure Marvel character and turns him into something way more intense than you'd expect. It's written by Robert Kirkman, and the story reimagines the Destroyer as a soldier who basically never left the battlefield, just like Frank Castle. But he started fighting back in World War II, and instead of retiring like a normal person, he just kept going for decades. Now he's old, worn out, and fully aware that his time is almost up. And what makes this story hit is that it's not about a comeback, it's about a final mission. Destroyer isn't trying to prove anything or discover himself. He already knows who he is, he's just trying to finish the job before his body gives out. So he sets out on this brutal, no holding back run to take down as much evil as he possibly can. The tone is very grounded and serious, similar to Punisher stories, but even more focused on the idea of aging. You really feel the weight of every fight. This isn't a guy jumping across rooftops like he used to. Every punch hurts, every movement costs him something, but at the same time, that's what makes him even more dangerous. He has nothing left to lose, and that mindset makes him push way past normal limits. There's also something interesting in how the story looks at the idea of never-ending war. Destroyer didn't adapt to peace, didn't build a normal life, didn't move on. Fighting is the only thing he knows, and now it's all he has left. It raises this uncomfortable question of whether heroes like this are actually helping, or just trapped in a cycle they can't escape. As an R-rated movie, this would be super different from anything Marvel has done. It's not about saving the world in a big flashy way. It's about one man trying to clean up as much darkness as he can before he dies. No glamour, no heroic speeches, just a brutal, emotional final chapter for someone who never stopped being a soldier. Deadpool Kills. Made up of Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, Illustrated, Deadpool Kills Deadpool, and others, it is probably one of the craziest things Marvel has ever done with Deadpool. It starts with Wade becoming fully aware that he is just a character in a story, and instead of laughing it off like usual, he completely loses it. He realizes all the pain, deaths, and chaos are just there for entertainment, and decides the only way to fix it is to destroy everything. So yeah, obviously, he starts by wiping out the entire Marvel Universe, and not in a quick off-screen way. These are brutal, creative, and honestly shocking kills. Heroes, villains, iconic characters, no one is safe. What makes it even more unsettling is that Deadpool isn't joking the whole time. There's still some humor, but there's also this dark, serious edge where you can tell something is genuinely broken in his mind. Then the story somehow gets even crazier. After realizing killing Marvel characters doesn't fix anything, Deadpool goes after the source of storytelling itself, and that's where Illustrated comes in, with him jumping into classic literature and taking out famous characters across different worlds. It turns into this weird mix of comedy, horror, and meta-commentary, where nothing feels off limits anymore. But the real peak is when he figures out that he is the problem, and that leads into Deadpool Kills Deadpool, where he starts hunting down alternate versions of himself across the multiverse. You end up with entire armies of Deadpools, some serious, some ridiculous, all clashing in this chaotic over-the-top war. It's messy, loud, and completely unhinged in the best way. As an R-rated movie, this would be perfect for Ryan Reynolds to go all out. You could lean fully into the meta humor, the violence, and the insanity without holding back. It wouldn't just be another Deadpool story, it would feel like a full breakdown of the character and the genre itself. And if done right, it could be one of the most unique and wild Marvel adaptations ever made. And now that Deadpool is officially in the MCU with Deadpool and Wolverine, the potential here is insane. Imagine a full cinematic event where Wade just goes off and starts taking down the entire MCU, or even just a what-if style scenario where nothing is off limits and nothing is canon. That kind of concept would be huge. We're talking about possibly the biggest crossover Marvel could ever pull off, with every character at risk and Deadpool at the center of the chaos. Honestly, that's a $2 billion idea waiting to happen. Marvel Zombies. It takes one of the simplest ideas ever and flips it into something genuinely disturbing. Instead of heroes saving the world from a zombie outbreak, the heroes are the outbreak. Almost every major character, the Avengers, the X-Men, villains, everyone gets infected. And because they still have their powers, things go downhill fast. We're not talking about slow, mindless zombies either. These versions still think, talk, and plan, which makes everything way more unsettling. The beginning is chaotic in the worst way possible. With superpowered zombies running around, humanity doesn't stand a chance. Characters like Spider-Man and Hulk become part of the problem instead of the solution, and that alone changes everything. Cities fall instantly, resistance gets wiped out, and within no time, Earth is basically done. It's brutal, fast, and there's this constant feeling that nothing can stop it. But what really makes the story interesting is what happens after the apocalypse. Once all humans are gone, the zombies are left with a new problem. They are starving. That's when the story slows down a bit and starts exploring their mindset. You've got these incredibly powerful beings who are now stuck dealing with hunger they can't control. Some feel guilt, some don't care at all, and others just fully embrace what they've become. The tone is extremely violent, but it's not just there for shock value. Yeah, the gore is wild, but underneath that, there's actually a clever idea being explored. As an R-rated movie, this would go crazy if done right. It's dark, intense, and it's something totally different from anything Marvel usually does. You could lean fully into the horror, the tragedy, and the shock of seeing heroes in the worst possible way. Now yeah, we already got a taste of this with the What If Zombie episode, and even the animated Marvel Zombies show, on the way with a second season coming, but let's be real, a live action version would hit completely different. Seeing these heroes, people we followed for years, fully transformed into terrifying, decaying versions of themselves on the big screen, that would be straight up mind-blowing.